This is Amplify You, the podcast about you discovering your message and broadcasting it to the world. If you're a coach, author, or speaker, you'll want to tune in. If you're looking for the best return on your time investment to get your message out to the world in a bigger way, we're giving you full access and behind the scenes look of how we're running our podcast, how our clients have found success, and what you can do to launch your podcast today. The world needs your message. I'm Michelle Abraham, the host. Join my family as we unleash your unique genius and find the connections you need to launch your adventure today. Join us and let's get amplified. Welcome, Amplify You family. Michelle Abraham here, your host. I am so excited to have a behind the mic interview today with podcast host Vicky Lowell. Vicky is the host of the Empowered Worth podcast, and she is from Florida. It's so cool. She was born and raised there, and she's such a passionate entrepreneur. She has been, same as me, since 2012. She's been really in finances and in financial services, and she's now transitioned to becoming a financial advisor. Now, Vicky is always been an active member of the community and worked for various entities worldwide. From open, honest conversations within these communities, she's discovered the need for women to learn financial planning. So, Vicky, I love what you learned when you were in those careers to now taking it on in your own business and really helping women find their financial footing. So I love that you kind of have a unique perspective on this, and we're going to dive into it a little bit more. But in the meantime, guys, I just wanted to introduce you to Vicky because I think she's such a wonderful person, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this interview. So welcome, Vicky. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Michelle. And thank you for those sweet, kind words. I'm so excited to be here. Yay, to be behind the mic. I love that.
Awesome. We're used to being in front of the mic, right? And now it's good to be talking about the behind the mic scenes. So one thing I wanted to mention too, you just became an international bestseller, and I wanted to talk about your book for a second. So your book is called Empower Your Worth, and it's both in Spanish and English. So talk to us about that.
I have a copy of it here. The book was literally, everybody says it's not like the Susie Orman big finance book. What it is basically like a call to action for all women. I start really anecdotally talking about women. Of course, all the names have been changed to protect the innocent, to really talk about their story and the story of financial abdication and how women don't engage financially. And I wanted to show that this is something that happens to every woman, whether you're Hispanic, African-American, Afro-Latina, white, whatever it may be, it's universal. It's very gender specific is what it is. And I wanted to break stereotypes down, and I wanted to just empower women to know their worth and to own their worth, because we are going to be in control of all these assets one day. We know that statistically in finance, yet women aren't coming to the financial table. At the end of the book, once I finish giving you guys all the stories and all the different types of women, I start giving you the tips. And these are really just everyday simple things that you can do to start you on the path of financial freedom and financial power.
I love that. I love the saying, improving your self-worth and your net worth and how it's tied together there. Can you just speak to that a little bit? And why is it so tied in together in those two things?
Well, what we see, and there's so much data that we could mine to bring up statistics for you, is that there is a direct correlation in how you perceive yourself and how you handle your money. I talk about it in the book. They're called money scripts. And in fact, on my website, www.empoweredworth.com, I have a free download where you can download the worksheet that's in the book. It's the Money Scripts worksheet. And that allows you to really take a look at when you started having your first relationship with money. You had a relationship with money very, very early on, whether because maybe you saw money being a toxic thing in your family, or maybe it was an empowerment thing in your family. What was that? How did you get that relationship with money? And how much of your self-worth is tied into how you feel about money? Do you feel blessed and that you should deserve it? Do you not? And then you give it away? Is showing your money how you get your self-worth? It's really all tied in there together. And for women, it can be a really hard thing because we are, through generations, been told that we're not good with money, that we should, you'll get married and he's going to handle the money for you. Well, and that's actually the title of my next book coming out hopefully by the end of the year. When Prince Charming stops being charming, what happens? what happens to you if you haven't been in charge of your own finances and you don't feel worthy of doing that, which is why you give them in control.
Right. And then for a lot of our listeners here, entrepreneurs who are, coaches, authors, speakers, and so they're doing a service in the world and they're then being paid for their service. And I found, struggling with this myself too, is that it's really hard not to have your self-worth tied to something when you're doing a service out there in the world. Have you noticed this as well with your female clients?
Yeah, it's really hard. And look, it's hard for me. I would love to be able to do what I do pro bono all the time. I would love to be able to give back. But the reality is that it is a business and I do need to charge for it. And I think that you see that a lot. And that's one of the topics that I do talk about when I'm coaching, especially when I have an entrepreneur who's trying to get in touch with her finances. I say, do you charge your worth? Do you know that? Do you own it and say, this is what I'm worth? It's just... It's black and white. A man would never think like that. A woman does.
Interesting. Yeah, it's really, how has your podcast been received, like with that message?
You know what? The podcast has been very well received. And the more that we have taken the deep dive into having what I call the uncomfortable conversation about money, the more well received it is. I do something that's very taboo. My mother is low-key horrified that I talk about money for a living. And I'm like, yeah, why not? Like, we talk about everything else. Why shouldn't we do it? You see podcasts on sex, religion, politics. The last taboo topic is money, and we're afraid to talk about it. So yeah, it's been really well received, and I'm really, really surprised. And nothing is more empowering to me than when I have somebody tell me, you're doing something that's just so meaningful. Your podcast made me think in a way I never thought, and I went and I did something different. That's a way of impacting somebody's life every day.
I love that. So other than, finances in general, talk to us a little bit about what some of the topics that you're covering in your show, the guests that you're bringing on. I think you've got a really cool collection of like some really like fascinating topics that are different than like most money money conversations, right? So I like the way that you're doing it. It's like with style and with like pizzazz and like with like amazing content. So
thank you so much. We started off thinking we were only going to talk about money. That was the goal. We were only going to be financially focused. But when you start empowering one aspect of your life, it seeps into every other aspect. One of the things that I have been able to do with the guests that I have been so fortunate to have in front of me and who have come on is tell stories. Tell stories of people who have been there, who have not been in touch with their finances, who have overcome, who are doing it. They're coaching. They are business owners in a lot of situations. Some of them are people who have just a story to tell about how they went from a lot of times a very bleak part of their life to being financially in control and doing what they do and owning their truth, which is really what it's about. I talk a lot, and I've said this on other podcasts that I've been a guest on. For me, wealth is not a number. Wealth is a holistic concept. And everybody that I have come on talks about how when they were able to holistically empower their worth, they were able to then make money, be happy, find romance, and do all that, and how all of that intermingles together. And that's where the podcast has gone. It's gone outside of the realm. And yeah, we do talk about finances, and we do talk about pay equality and gender equality and all those issues that affect our daily bread and butter. But we also talk about the empowering yourself, surviving trauma, because all those things are holding you back from prosperity and abundance.
That's an interesting way of looking at it all, that those, like, it's like, when really, would you agree that it comes down to the self-worth is really the essence of it all, that, once we work on our self-worth. Yeah.
Completely. Because look, you can have, and you see that it's in my book when I talk about money scripts, people who make millions of dollars and squander it all. And they're not just spending. Everybody says, oh, well, they were spending. No. There are people who literally feel unworthy and give all their money away to people who ask them for money. It's very typical of lottery winners. They win it. It was very easy money. They don't feel worthy of it because they got it so easily, and they end up giving it away. Wow. So those are things that we need to do. And once you empower one aspect, everything happens. And money touches every aspect of your life, realistically speaking. So that's why it's important to talk about that.
Wow. Do you have any tips for our podcast listeners out there that are, they're all entrepreneurs working in the spaces of coaches, authors, speakers, they're looking at doing a podcast out there. What are some things some quick tips that they can do to kind of like start making some changes in their self-worth and also in their net worth?
Well, the first thing I want to say is, quite frankly, start just becoming financially aware of where you are if you're an entrepreneur. Many times entrepreneurs are great thinkers. They're great inventors. They're great with so many of the creative things, but we neglect the financial side of it. So definitely get in touch with that. If you're thinking of doing a podcast, don't wait. Do it. I kind of held back when I started, and I do this now weekly. I love it. I look forward to it. You're not going to regret doing a podcast. That's my personal opinion. I'm trying to get my daughter to do a podcast now. So I love podcasting. I think it's great for your business. It gets you out there. But the main key for anything that you're doing, if you have a coaching business, is be authentic. And that's why I love podcasting, because it's really given Empowered Worth as a company. And yes, I'm on the website and people can read my book and they can see me on Amazon. But this is what allows you to get to know me and to know why I'm passionate about this. That it's, yes, I get to make money from it, but I also get to live my dream. And I get to, talk from my heart. And that's what podcasting gives me.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. And, it's really great. It gives you a voice and it gives you, someone like people get to know you and like you and trust you. Right. And so you found that going from podcasts to then having some new coaching clients in your world, that's been a really great transition because you can send them to certain episodes to learn more information. How have you been using it in your business as a tool to kind of help grow your business?
Oh, well, first of all, I've had people reach out to me because they've listened to the podcast. And I have people who listen to the podcast who will say, this one's really good for my friend, and they'll refer them to that podcast episode. And that's amazing to me. Like when you first start hearing, like somebody says, I heard your podcast. I had somebody come to a book signing and they came because they heard my podcast. And that was like, cool. Oh my God, somebody's actually out there listening. So it's really special. But yeah, it helps in that sense. It helps bring people in. And it is great to refer to an episode and say, did you hear this episode when we talked about this? Maybe you should. And to also see response. If I see that an episode really connects, then I know I may have to do a blog on that. I may have to do a mini course on that. And then I use other avenues to be able to do that. I might do a Facebook Live mini course for my group. I may do, because I know that topic is resonating. It's great data.
Yeah, it's really good to kind of see what's working, what's not, testing out different topics. When you first started your podcast, were you very mindset of I think you mentioned this already, that you were just going to talk on financial topics. And then what was the pivoting point where you started branching out to more of a overall kind of approach to having all sorts of different guests on?
It was talking to clients. It was talking to clients and hearing the stories and realizing that I have to talk about women in the workforce, and I have to talk about me too. And I have to talk about, right now I've done a great stuff on COVID and the impact it's having on pay equality and women and how it's going to set us back. Why? Because I had somebody who I was speaking to and they said, this is a problem for me. And then I have the platform of the podcast where I can talk about that. Is it financial? Somewhat, but not really. I mean, so we get to expand on that. And being able to tell stories. Women empower themselves by listening to other people who have walked in their shoes. There is a tremendous amount of power in that. So being able to bring those women to the podcast and have them share their stories is really, 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 really just powerful.
That's great. And I love how you've been flexible to be able to move with the ebb and flow. I love what you're saying, which I think podcast listeners that are in our audience that are listening, just pick up this really great nugget from Vicky, because she's talking about talking to her clients in her real business and talking to them about what their problems are, and then being, oh, that's a problem for them. Then using her platform to voice that problem and come up with a solution and educate from that. I think that's a brilliant way of looking at using your podcast. Not only is it helping your current clients, but also future clients. Obviously, they're not going to be the only ones with that problem. So I think that was a really smart move on figuring out what kind of content is going to be good for your show.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And now you said your mom would be devastated to or just does not love that you're talking about money for a living. So take us back to your story. What's the story that got you kind of motivated to start looking into finances and being a financial expert for women?
Well, I was my prototypical client. That's what happened. I fell into a very typical Cuban lifestyle convention. I was going to marry the right guy, which I did. He's a great husband, great provider, and he provided very well. So I became the stereotypical housewife. And while that works for a lot of women, it did not work for me. I was miserable. I love my children to high heaven. I always say this because they go, Mom, you say this and it bothers us. I love them, but I was not an earth mother. I should have stayed in the workforce. I didn't do that. Fast forward, 2008, my husband works in finance. We went through the big market crash and we found ourselves in a situation where I didn't know. I had to ask him, I'm like, can we afford to pay our mortgage? And he's like, yes. I go, what is our mortgage? And he's like, it's this. I'm like, I had no idea. I didn't know what it would cost to run my household. God forbid my husband had been in an accident, not a stock market crash. I wouldn't have known where's the life insurance. I didn't know any of this. So I started kind of putting myself back out there, saying I want to have a career again. I want to start getting into it. And I ended up in finance because my husband wanted a marketing assistant. And he offered me a job and I ended up working for him. And I ended up becoming a financial advisor and getting all my licenses. And then I said, you know what? I'm seeing this too often. This was not a fluke that it's just me who is doing this. This is everybody around me. These are all the women I know. I need to do something. I need to change the narrative is where it started. And that's what I did.
I love it. Yeah, because you saw something yourself in your own life that was like, oh, wow. Yeah, we really need to, reawaken to like what it does mean to like run a household and take care of our finances and feel like we have more control over it that way too. I love that your own story related to how you got into it, because I often find that that's the people that can do something that they had a story based around that are the best experts out there, right? You personally went through that yourself. So that's awesome.
Yeah, totally. It's what allows you to connect. I think in coaching, there is such power in having a coach. Like if think about the Major League Baseball. Coaches who were major league players tend to be pretty good coaches because they've been there. They know what those guys are going through. It's the same thing. When I coach a client and she says, I can't believe, I go, honey, I've been there. There's no need to be embarrassed. I know exactly. And I went from here to having a Series 7 and a Series 66 and trading stocks on Wall Street. If I can do that, you can do it too. Mm-hmm. And that helps really just make people feel at ease. And that's what you want. You want authenticity. It always goes back to authenticity. And that's what sharing my story, which I was hesitant to do, by the way. When I started Empowered Worth, I didn't share that story with anybody. Mm-hmm. And then I was asked to be on something called Happy Hour. And it was all about sharing stories. And when I did that, my business exploded. Everybody was like, oh my God, I didn't know this was your story. I'm like, yeah, this was my story.
Wow. I love that. It's the power of your own story to actually bring in business into your own business is so interesting. And being authentic and like now you can serve from that place of like, oh my gosh, I can relate to my clients. Like it was there too myself. Any last quick tips for our audience out there too, who maybe don't have the financial like brain on. They're in the creative space and in the, the taxes have gone by maybe, or, whatever. Mm-hmm. What are a few tips to get started to get back into like turning that brain on and getting interested in like what your numbers are? Cause I can be honest from my own point of view, like the numbers and the financial stuff is not like my passion or interest at all. But I see the importance of it and the value in it more so than ever, but it's the motivating me to get into those numbers, right? So what can you offer us for some great tips on those?
Well, the first thing I would offer, I used to tell everybody, pick up a newspaper, pick up a money magazine or this. I'm going to tell you something easier. Pick a good financial podcast, whether it's Empower Worth or any of the other ones. There's some really good content out there in the financial space. Pick one and listen to it. It's an easy thing to do, and it starts kind of getting you into that mindset. And mindset is 50% of it, if not maybe 60 or 70, to be honest with you. After that, a good educational course, if you feel you're lacking it, we offer one on Empowered Worth. That's what we do. And then if you can afford it, coaching. coaching. I love, working with clients, helping them budget, helping them get out of debt, and helping them really understand. Like, I'll sit down and I'll go through a whole retirement plan with you, because financial advisors aren't there to educate. And that's what people don't really understand. They have a lot on their plate. Educating a client is not necessarily what their purpose is. That's what we can do.
I love, you're such a good compliment to, like, I think helping people get those financial brain going. And I love your answer. It was just the perfect answer ever. Go listen to your podcast. Obviously I like that answer because I agree too. Like, listening to the podcast are just a great way of learning content and getting excited for that. And, investing in a coach too is such a great thing, because you're going to see that return on your investment back into your life, because you're going to now know what's going on, what's happening. You might not know where you're losing all those, dollars out of, a leaky hole somewhere in your life, your household, in your business, whatever it is. So having another eyes on that is so valuable. So Vicky, I want to thank you so much for joining us today on Amplify You. Guys, make sure you go check out Empowered Growth Podcast. It's so good. And Vicky, where can we find more information about you? You mentioned empoweredworth.com is your website, and there's a download there. Can you tell us what that was again and where to find it on your website?
Yes. If you go right on my website, first landing page at www.empoweredworth.com, that's all one word, you will see a little tag there that says mailing list and free PDF download. You're going to download the Money Scripts workbook that's in my book, and it's going to help you figure out what your relationship with money is. And that's really important, because that's the main thing. Aside from that, Instagram, Facebook, all social media platforms, and of course, a lot of the podcast platforms, be it my website or Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify. We're on all those.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Guys, make sure you check it out. And I love that idea of finding the money script. So if you don't know what your money script is, go check it out and find out. That's a great place to start. And go listen to Empowered Worth. Thank you so much, Vicky, for being with us today. Amplify You family.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So great to have you. We'll have you back again. And Amplify You family, make sure you know your finances, because it's tied to your self-worth and your net worth are all tied together. And if you can make a couple of changes, oh my gosh, what a difference that will make in your world. So until next time and next week, thanks again, Vicky. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.